Good morning, Craig Peterson here. I'm having a great day today, so far anyways. And I was on with Mr. Polito this morning. We covered, of course, some Texas stuff, but from a Massachusetts angle, the electrical generation in Mass and what the numbers look like. It's actually quite a bit different in all of the New England states. It's amazing when I did the research on this. Apple, they're working on 6G. I explain how Apple is trying to divest itself of some of these vendors it's had for years that just aren't cutting it anymore. So here we go with Mr. Polito.
It is time to bring in our good friend, the man who has the answers to all the questions we may have, our tech talk guru, Craig Peterson. Good morning, Craig.
Hey, good morning, sir. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Actually, it's getting much nicer outside now, so I'm feeling good. My friend Bob in Texas tells me it's going to be in the 70s today. We still need to talk about Texas. It was great last week having the conversation with you about them, just about the failures and, well, the good old-fashioned green energy. Then I want to talk about 6G. Let's start with this. Basically, energy failures contributed to the deadly situation in Texas. Isn't that true?
Yeah, absolutely is. When we look at Texas and the Department of Energy and how much generation they have, they rely pretty heavily on wind power. In fact, Texas was generating, let's put it this way, about 8,000 megawatts of electricity before the storm hit from wind power. Then the next day at the height of the storm, it went from 8,000 megawatt hours down to 650. It just completely wiped it out. What this is really indicative of is a general problem that Texas seems to have. Just like Massachusetts, we're looking at our electrical generation and where does most of our power come from. Number one by far here is using the natural gas resources and burning that to make electricity. Well, that is also number one down in Texas. They had about 44 megawatt hours before the storm. That dropped down to 30,000. So natural gas, coal, wind, and nuclear in Texas all dropped about 20% because of the storm. Man, did that cascade. But wind, it got wiped out.
See, there you go. When you need it the most, it's not there. I mean, we really need Scotty from Star Trek to get the dilithium crystals to make us some power. I mean, that's what we need. Then if Texas has another crisis, he can say, I'm giving it all I got, Captain. Not to make light of the fact that people actually died, but these types of things, Chuck Schumer saying, well, this is what happens when you don't pay attention to climate change. That's a nice thing to say to people who, a state where people died. You get what you deserve. Yeah. This is what happens. Yeah. Or you don't want to join the feds. Unbelievable.
Well, here in Mass, about 1/4 of Mass's total generation of electricity comes from what are called renewable resources. The largest chunk of that in Mass is small-scale solar panels, less than a megawatt of generating capacity. So here what we're talking about when we're talking about the renewable stuff, obviously wind is something they call renewable. Solar is something they call renewable, but you have to have sun. You have to have no snow on the solar panels. If you're going to do wind, you have to make sure that just like the leading edge of a wing on an airplane, you either have a bladder that expands and contracts to break the ice off, or you have these things heated. There's a video going around from, I think it was 2017, of a helicopter in Texas with a spray unit hanging underneath it, like we use here on our jets. And it was hovering around these wonderful windmills, spraying them, trying to melt the ice off of them. If we're going to try and do this, you got to try and do it right. Again, let's talk green. The manufacturing of solar panels is anything but green. The manufacturing of these lithium-ion batteries, even the nickel, the metal batteries, is anything but green. We talked before about how a Hummer, an H1, running diesel and burning diesel for its entire lifetime is greener than a Toyota Prius because of all of the pollution that's caused by that Toyota Prius. The fact that your car, if you've got one of these electric cars, God bless you. Those things are so cool. I would love to have one. But don't let it get stuck in your head that somehow it's green, because it is not. It doesn't just have to do with the production of electricity. In Mass, we've totally gotten rid of these coal power plants. Our biggest nuclear plant down on the Cape has been shut down in May 2019. I was going to say last year because I'm not sure 2020 actually happened.
Yeah, I know. We skipped it. It's like the 13th floor in a hotel. Yeah. No, go ahead. Yeah, we've got to think about nuclear. So we've got to think about all these other things.
Yes. You know what the biggest problem, if you ask me, with nuclear is? That we are using standards at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission that were established in the early 50s.
Yeah.
They don't take into account these sixth-generation nuclear plants. Right now, extremely safe nuclear plants are on the drawing board and are being tested, that you could stick one right in your hometown. You have your own nuclear plant. The thing's buried underground. There's basically no moving parts other than a couple. If it was to have a massive failure, there'd be no leak of any nuclear material. That little plant, you can get them that'll produce 1 megawatt all the way on up from there. We could have them all over the place. We don't have the nuclear waste problem. It's using very low radioactive materials. In fact, it can take some of these radioactive materials from these old plants that we have, from Pilgrim, et cetera, and reuse them. The result would be something that's even lower nuclear problem. So it's crazy. We're not thinking.
Yeah, no, that's because Bruce Springsteen and the No Nukes concert back in the late 70s, kind of solidified it all. You got to hate nuclear power. Yet when Kathy and I flew from Milan to Paris over the Alps, I looked down and saw 2 separate nuclear power plants, and France gets the majority of their electricity from nuclear power. By the way, they're not doing it really with the 6th generation nuclear power plants. They still have older power plants, and it works. We're talking with Craig Peterson, our Tech Talk guru. Great guy. Craig, I think you made the point. I think they have a lot of thinking to do in a lot of these places. I want to talk about Apple already working on 6G. Now, first of all, I got a 5G phone over the holidays. And 5G availability, it's not as available as one would think. And we're already talking about 6G?
Yeah, 5G, unless your carrier is T-Mobile, 5G is unavailable throughout most of the United States. We won't have time to get into all the technical issues, and I'll probably get into it a little this weekend as well on my show. Apple has decided they've had it with these third-party vendors. They've had it. I'm talking about the chip manufacturers. So, for instance, when Apple came out with its iPhone and its iPad, it was using chips, and today chips completely designed by Apple. There's some licensed technology in there, no doubt. Apple is ditching Intel for all of its computers. It's already selling computers. If you buy a new MacBook Air or Mac Mini or some of these others very shortly, including a small MacBook Pro, it no longer has that Intel chip in it. Well, they want to get rid of Qualcomm chips that are in the phones because they don't meet their specs. If you're using 5G on your new iPhone 12, you'll notice your battery, it looks like it has a leak that uses so much electricity just to do this 5G because of the way 5G works, but more particularly because of the way Qualcomm makes that little modem chip that's inside the phone. So Apple has said, okay, we're already making the main CPUs for the computers. Let's get busy. Let's make our own chipsets for cellular data. I'll let you in on a secret. Apple is really moving towards having these chips in every device they sell. So if you get an iPad, you get a laptop, etc., you're going to be connecting to the 6G, probably some 5Gs as well initially, to this new 6G network. Apple wants to be an absolute leader there. Let me tell you, they will be. They've done some amazing things, and they're not stuck with the silicon they designed 10 years ago like Qualcomm is. They're starting from scratch, and they can do it.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting because I'd like to see that. And if Apple does it, fine. I am on the Verizon network, and I have just found that there's no big deal here with me. Other than it not being all that available, I don't notice any difference between the 5G and the 4G LTE. I don't.
Well, many carriers are kind of spoofing it a little bit. They're calling a more advanced version of 4G 5G. And Ajit Pai, who was the Trump administration guy over there at the FCC, was starting to come down on these guys. The whole Biden switch up here has made it so that they're just letting it run wild right now. So 5G isn't 5G, and it's just not generally available, particularly not available on the Verizon network.
Craig, this is great. As usual, how do people get in touch with you?
Well, if you go to CraigPeterson.com, you're going to find all kinds of stuff right there. We have courses that we have started sending out, little trainings every week. We got bigger trainings coming up to keep you up to date on security, step by step, what you should do, right? I've got 50 different special reports that we're going to be sending out. You can only get it if you go to CraigPeterson.com/subscribe. Sign up there. I'll send you a few of them right out of the chute to get you started. Then every week I'm going to be sending you more, and we have deeper courses and deeper dives and webinars. I really want everybody to understand what you have to do to stay safe, particularly our small businesses, our elderly, everybody out there. Again, CraigPeterson.com.
That's great. Craig, thank you so much as usual, and thank you for the extra time last week you gave us. We look forward to talking with you again soon.
Take care, Jim. Thanks.
For those that have been following here on what is happening with my Improving Windows Security course, you'll be happy to know it is finished, and we're putting it all up. We're making a little membership site for y'all where I'm going to be putting all of these different things, make it easy for you to digest it. That's the whole idea, right? Little reminders and bookmarks you can put into the video, text and screenshots and everything. So it is almost there. Keep an eye out on your emails. Take care, everybody. We'll be back on tomorrow.